Hi everyone, my name is Tolu Akinyemi, also known as Poetolu.
Your first
No, but the
book
first-
that I ever read was Your Father Walks Like a Crab.
Your father walks like a crab, yeah.
Yeah. Then
Yes.
I laugh at these skinny girls. What is it
Yeah.
about girls?
Yeah, about the name, I coincidentally noted that the word poet ends with T and my name starts with T.
Creativity.
Into the name.
Hey, you. Welcome to the What Reading Book Podcast, the no boring zone where we get you all excited about books that are worth reading.
On the What Reading Podcast, you get some unbiased take on books, juicy scoops of what runs through the minds of your favorite author. You can call us your virtual book connoisseurs that help you filter through the many books out there and let you know the ones worth reading.
On this podcast, we talk about different book genre. We do not discriminate. From fiction to non-fiction, poetry, biographies, memoirs, you name it, so long as it is written by an author of African descent and project our very own authentic African stories. You can count us in. So welcome on board and thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed the show.
Hi guys. Hello everybody. It's episode 3 and I'm so excited about how far we've come. Like, I hope it's not too early to be happy or to be jumping about and feeling that, oh yes, we already cracked this, you know. But it feels so good to be able to have you guys back on the show with us. As always, my name is Tobi Enyade, and with me here is my bibliophile friend, Seyi. Hi Seyi, how are you?
Hi, Toby. I'm doing very good.
Okay. Now you're laughing. We'll put it aside for now. But anyways, we've got a guest today. Yes. I think everybody really loved the episode 2, like the interview we had. If you missed out on that, just go back, just scroll a bit further down and check it out. But today is another episode. And of course, we've got a very special guest with us. Initially, right, I was thinking of reading his bio or profile, but I was just like, okay, this person needs no introduction in quote, if you're a bibliophile or if you are someone who loves poetry. So yes, I just gave you guys a hint, right? I'll just allow the guest to introduce himself. Yes, I'm putting him on the spot. Hi, guests. Please introduce yourself.
Hi everyone.
Hi, Poetolu.
You've done it. That's it.
But we want to hear more. Tell us more. Who are you?
Hi everyone, my name is Tolu Akinyemi, also known as Poetolu.
The famous Poetolu. No, I'm a Yoruba girl. We have to add some emphasis to this whole thing. Like, you can't just add some adjective. But you're not. You're being humble. I would do all of
You
that.
had your chance, you passed it on to me. So
No, don't worry. If Toby had a chance and passed it, I think I can introduce. So I can say my first encounter with Poetolu because I must have encountered him via his writing. So my first encounter with Poetolu was most likely in the very early days of Instagram. So
yes, bro.
even before you get to find this page, you literally would have found his writings. So you just see a 2-line poem rather, and everybody's just going crazy about it. Just say something very, very simple about a lady in a red dress.
Most random stuff.
Yeah, the most random stuff. And it makes sense to you, and you're like, okay. And I'm like, okay, in very few words, this guy is able to
This mind must be very deep.
Was able to say a million things, and that was my first encounter with poetry. And let me say, I used to write poetry at some point in my life. When we were still very, very much in the game, I must say. I still write poetry. Full disclosure, I was a very active, poetry writer. And someone wanted to flatter me one day and said, "Oh," and forwarded one of his poems to me and says, "This reminds me of your writings." And I quickly said, "No, this guy is beyond me." So I'm flattered. Anyway, so that's the guy we have here. We have the OG here, the poetry OG. First, before you even introduce yourself, I'm just wondering how the use of Poetolu stock? Is it that you must have written 1,000 poems to some hearts, and the hearts were like, "Guy, you're badass. In fact, on this day, from this day forward, your name shall no longer be
Poetolu ló
Tolu
máa jẹ́.
Akinyemi, but we'll simply call you Poetolu." So over to you.
I'm still looking around for the person you guys are.
Don't start.
I can't recognize myself in these words. Well, I believe you, so thank you for that's something. It's very easy for you to just be doing things sometimes and you're not really paying attention to. You just feel like you're just doing your thing, and once in a while you get some kind of feedback and
get some kind of accolades.
Why are you for me? I'm going to harass you on this episode.
But it's fine. Humility is fine. Humility is fine.
I know you're a very humble person. I could go on and on like Seyi as well to talk about the first time I encountered Poetolu and all of that, right? And there was one time recently I had to say like, wait, are you coy? Are you shy? It's like, oh my God. I know, but again, I'm just like, it's amazing what you've actually done for yourself. And it's part of the reason why initially I said that you need no introduction at all. If you're someone who loves literature, if you're a fan of good, simple poetry, the chances and odds that you would have stumbled on Poetolu's work are very, very high on Instagram. And so I feel you're one of those people that used a platform, you're one of those people that used like an unseemly platform, like an unusual platform to sort of like build your own audience and connect with them. And I feel, again, you kind of like bypassed all the gatekeepers or the usual people or the usual channels that you require for you to make your big break into like the literary scene or into, that particular genre you're known for. And so, again, it's a pleasure to have you here. And I'm still waiting for you to answer Sheyi's question, like, how did you come about that name Poetolu? At what point did it stick? And at what point, what inspired the name Poetolu? Because it just flows. I'm like, okay, one of a kind. Tell us, please.
Okay. Again, thank you so much. Like, you both have been very kind to me with your words. Yeah, about the name, I coincidentally noted that the word poet ends with T and my name starts with T as well.
T as well.
And I felt like, okay, why don't you just put this back to back and
poetry
talent, creativity,
poetry emotion.
There's nothing profound behind it. That was just.
It is profound. Come on. I mean,
deep.
There's this pressure on.
It's deep.
Yeah. There's this pressure on poets, or if you are within the literary scene, for you to be very esoteric or have some kind of mystery and make sure that your words or whatever you're putting out there is so hard to demystify or hard to decipher by your readers, basically. And so, again, it's just so amazing how the seemingly random and simple things are what has actually helped you, blow in quote or become very, very famous.
I think I went through that stage actually of writing. I used to think the harder poetry sounds, the more authentic it is.
Yeah.
The longer people spend trying to to unravel what the writer is trying to say, then shows how profound it is. But I think what really changed
to show your mastery,
what changed my style of writing was just understanding that at the end of the day, I think poetry is like every other language that we speak.
Okay.
English, and it doesn't make any sense if you're speaking a language, even if what you're saying is the cure for cancer, and the people you're speaking to can't understand what you're saying, it's pointless. So I just found out that at the end of the day, it's what's important is communicating to the audience. So, and then I made that the centerpiece of my writing, and I think that resonated with a lot of people. And that was
Simplicity,
how
ease of understanding, and
yeah,
makes sense.
yeah, and that was how the phrase "poetry for people with poetry" was born. Because one of the commonest feedback I was getting was from people was that I don't like poetry, but I like your poetry.
I
Are there
like
people that don't
Poetolu's
like
poetry.
poetry?
Yes,
Well,
let me tell
Yes,
you guys.
yes. And you know the funny thing I notice is those people that say they don't like poetry, it's not like
Hmm.
they don't like reading. A lot of them like reading, but the poetry comes across like that guy who is trying to put you to shame, embarrass you. You know,
Thank
you know, like
me.
yeah, you know, like nobody likes to feel stupid. So when you're reading something and there's some profound meaning behind it that you're supposed to see and you're not seeing it, then it makes it look like you're the one that is, stupid. Nobody likes that, and I think that's what pushes some people away from
That is so true.
poetry. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
really
think
true.
reminds me
Reminds me.
of West African verse that I read. I'm always very careful when I say we, because different schools must have had different syllabuses and maybe the times as well. So West African verse that I read then, and how poetry was so, save for a few poems, a lot of it was so tedious. Save for poems like Africa, my Africa,
So you were you
Africa.
an art student or science student?
Well,
What
I
were
was
you
a
doing
science student,
with?
but yeah,
Uh-uh.
we read it in my junior secondary school. So I
Oh,
think I
okay.
read it in GSS 2 or so. Yeah, so we had West African Verse was one
Interesting.
of the books that we were supposed to read. So I think I developed my interest in poetry then, but I never wrote. I only just liked the wordplay. So something interesting had happened prior to me getting into secondary school. So we had this summer school between primary and secondary school. And so when we're wrapping up the summer school, they were trying to nominate people that would sort of make a presentation for the closeout ceremony, whatever it was. And then because I liked English a lot, I was sort of a very good English student then. So they had asked me to come and make a performance of poetry. And I can
Spoken
never,
word, Jay.
yeah, spoken word actually. And I can never forget my performance. I still remember the lines of that poem till today. So yeah, I think that was my first. So by the time we were reading West African verse, I took interest, but damn, those poems were hard. And I think it's different when you're reading for leisure versus when you're reading to pass an
Yeah.
exam. So
True. You
yeah.
can
Yeah.
say
So
that
maybe that
again.
yeah,
And
so maybe
that's
that
what
also affected people's interest in poetry. Yeah.
that kind of like makes my own perspective different or differ from you both. Because as an art student that happens to be a wounded lawyer or one that, anyways, I'm actually grateful I didn't study law eventually. But as someone who stumbled on English studies in our
My
uni
lord.
days and had to make something out of it, and this is just giving me deja vu of those moments during my lit 201 classes, and we had to actually study literature for academic purpose, and you are exposed to Shakespearean poetry. And I remember, I don't know, my books are back at home, but I remember there was this William Shakespeare collection like that, and those sessions or the classes, I only end up sleeping on through. But everything they're saying just never stuck. Like it was just always there. What is all this? And of course, our lecturers were people that were enamored by the idea of, being able to find deep meanings or, be the interpreters of what Shakespeare was trying to say or any of these poets were trying to convey. And then eventually when they are in front and the guy will just go on and on, it's almost as if it's some spirit that is inspiring him to give meanings to the lines. He will say some of the interpretations that he's getting from it, and I'll be like, is it not the same lines or the same poetry that I just
Yeah,
poem
that's
that I
what it's
just
called, the
finished
spirit
reading?
and the
And
letters. The spirit.
Ewo, also me, I was just like, oh my god, I can't deal. I think some of the courses that I probably had the lowest score in my lit class were the poetry ones, and honestly just made me grow this satisfaction or dislike for poetry, and I just used to look at it from afar like I'm not interested until Instagram happened, and then you just see random people. I think aside from Poetolu, then one of those people that helped me rekindle my love for poetry was this lady Rupi Kaur as well. A lot of people have reservations about her too, but again, it was the simplicity for me and how, simple random experiences around us were used to convey deep meanings and all. So again, it's such a beautiful thing you've done for yourself. And it's exciting to hear the story behind the name Poetolu. But again, I'm wondering, at what point did you feel like, oh, this is a big deal? It's worth paying attention to. I mean, like your writing and, gift as a poet.
Yeah. So I've always loved the words, right from when I was in primary school. And I think that was even coincidental as well because I grew up in Akure. And I grew up in Akure. Is that coincidental as well or intentional?
No, I don't know reason why I'm laughing. Just keep quiet. Don't let me expose you.
So, so I grew up in Akure, and during the holidays, TV stations would open 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And so all through the day, if you're a student or, schools are on holiday, there's nothing to do. The only thing I had to do was read. So that was kind of where, that love for reading started, which eventually became a love for writing. And I think it's fair to say every writer is first a reader, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I met a few like-minded people on Facebook then, and we would write poetry and we would judge it and we would...
Oh, so you started from Facebook before Instagram?
It actually started on Facebook.
Interesting.
Yeah, I started on Facebook, and I still have fond memories of writing with those guys. And eventually, I left Facebook and I joined. So Facebook then, now talking about the name Poetolu came around. Facebook, you didn't need to have a username, right? Just on Facebook. I think you can now, but then you didn't need to have. So when I decided to leave Facebook and join Instagram, and then I needed to choose a username, and I was already writing lots of poetry. I was like, okay, poet, Tolu, now I can't even remember what the question is.
Just stop. I wanted you to sort of recall the events or things that surrounded.
This was a big deal.
Oh, yeah. So I think I knew it was a big deal. I mean, so it started with a love for writing. That was just me doing something I was enjoying. But I think I knew it was something worth paying attention to when I changed my style of writing and I was more intentional with my writing. Like I said earlier, at first I was always trying to write in a profound way that, people would have to grab a dictionary and side by side beside the poem and, because I thought that was what made good poetry. But at some point, I realized that I had to boil down the components of my poetry to 3 things. Simplicity, based on how people engaged. Because then when I would write those kind of poetry that were obscure, I would write it, I would post it on Facebook, and nobody would comment. Few people would like it. Or someone would just leave a comment and say, nice one. And I'm like,
nice one. Thumbs up.
I could tell they didn't really understand what they
wrote. When you're writing rubbish, and you're getting nice one. Go and reevaluate what you're putting out the big.
Thumbs up.
Yeah, so after I became more intentional, I began to write more simply, like simple, relatable. I started writing about things that happened around me that when you're reading it, there's a very high chance it's something that has happened to you or that someone that something like that has happened to. So simplicity, it's been relatable, and then the last thing was humor, and I think the humor was a big deal as well. Humor is a universal language, and part of that, after making it simple and relatable, by infusing, regardless of what topic I'm writing about, by infusing some humor into it, it makes it even more relatable to people.
Exactly.
And then when I started doing those things, the thumbs up and the nice one stopped and developed into, oh, I remember this happened to like some, like people were now giving more detailed responses to the writings, and that was a sign that okay, this is going in a good direction. And I was enjoying it, and the more I was writing, the more it seemed people were enjoying it, and I just started doing more of it. And I think I moved to Instagram after I wrote my first book, which was actually an encouragement from people, because then people would be like, oh, you should write a book. And I'm like, book? People kept saying it. And yeah, that came about. But I think it all started with a switch in my approach, and more people began to relate to my writings. And that was when I knew, okay, there might be something here.
Would you have stopped writing if people like were not
get positive feedback
or positive feedback? Yeah. Yes or no?
Was it the feedback that spurred you on?
I think it plays a major role because it tells you that you're doing something. So it's like a comedian, right?
Oh yeah.
This is a very good example. So if you are a stand-up comedian and you're on stage,
if it's a dead joke,
walking, right away, because you know from the feedback, the instant reaction of the audience. So, and sometimes you might have planned, I'm not a comedian, but I know that's how it works.
You'd have planned their set.
But based on what the feedback you're getting from people, you can tell that, okay, I need to tweak this a little bit, and then you go this way a little bit, and then the feedback increases, and then you're like, okay, this is working, and then you start going in that direction.
Although there's a chance that some of the guests are people that go back home to laugh.
What kind of laughter are you holding at the show that you have to wait till you get home before you start laughing?
Maybe so they get the joke.
So they got the joke, but they get home and like, see what that guy talk, and they start laughing between themselves, and but the comedian never wants that. He wants the laughter to be instant. So one of the things I was going to talk about very quickly is just getting to this most recent book that I've written.
Okay.
First off, the title is interesting.
Yeah.
Ahead was the spider's nest.
Yeah.
Many times I tried to be fox deep, right? So I tried to form as if I'm deep. And so when I saw the cover, I was like, what could this mean? But it was L'Oreal, right? until like maybe went through the book, and then I saw there was a particular poem that actually the title came from. What were you thinking of when you decided that this is the title I'm going to? Because there are also very, very interesting themes that you covered and the poems that you wrote. 100 pages of very, very interesting and very dynamic poems. So why this title?
Good question. Like you said, there's nothing really special about that title, and there's just one simple reason for it, and it's a simple reason that also guided the titles of all my previous books. It's a known fact that lots of creative people are bad business people. They are good at being creative, or they are bad at selling their creativity, right? Anytime I'm writing a book, I'm not just imagining the book in the hands of the reader. I'm also looking at the process or the stages between the book leaving my hands and getting into the hands of the reader. So at some point, that book has to sit on a shelf in a bookstore, or and the way I'm looking at it is I want to have a title, and not just a title, a cover design that grabs someone's attention. So there are 50 books on the shelf, and a random potential buyer is browsing through. I want the title of the book and the design of the cover to draw their attention, if that makes sense. So we say don't judge a book by its cover, but that's what we do all the time. That's literally what we do. The title attracts you, and then you're like, okay, what's this about? Let me dig in. So that's the simple reason behind it, having a title that would catch someone's attention. And not just on the bookshelf in the bookstore, but even in the hands of the people who have bought it. So I'm imagining someone holding the book in a bus or at an event, and someone sees it in your hand, and they're like,
Yeah.
What's this book about? And even to the size of the book. So the size of my book, trim size of my books are very intentional. So the plan is to make it small enough to fit into someone's handbag or back pockets. Because I want the book to be one that people take out of the house.
Yeah.
Big, and you're going out, maybe you're going for an appointment and you want to grab a book on your bookshelf to read. You're not going to grab the biggest book. You're going to grab a small book that can fit into your hand or your bag or your back pocket. So it's more the titles, the design, all those things they are more of marketing strategies or decisions than anything else, So yeah, I think I answered.
I just want to add something or like a follow-up to that Sheyi's question. I was thinking we're going to touch about the female elements in all of your titles. Yeah. Go on and on. Your first book that I ever read was Your Father Walks Like a Crab.
Your Father Walks Like a Crab, yeah.
Yeah. Then I laugh at these skinny girls. What is it about girls? And their funny men cannot be trusted.
It's about the guy.
Exactly.
And then this one,
your theory is falling apart already. Your theory,
funny men cannot be trusted is about guys.
Yeah.
It doesn't entirely fall apart.
The cover image of that particular book as well, for Funny Men Cannot Be Trusted, it's almost as if it was directing that title at women that you people had better be careful. And then there was a lady. Did you check the back? And I'm just like,
or maybe after you wrote Funny Men Cannot Be Trusted, you realize that it's like these guys are not buying this thing. Or let me just
perhaps so we're reading different meanings to even the most mundane actions of yours.
I like it. No, that's a good thing.
But I think that the idea of creating very very of creating titles that would randomly pique people's interest is very great and very strategic. So listening to you talk about the intentionality of the trim size, intentionality of the cover design of the title is some good lesson in marketing for some writers, because sometimes a lot of writers treat their projects as passion projects and not money projects.
And if I can add, Poetolu's books actually do well on our shelves from a bookseller's perspective, right? And I know poetry is one genre or session like that people hardly go to because they cannot be bothered. People would rather do spoken words than buy books and all of that. But in comparison to quite a number of other titles we've sold so far, like it just seems to always make that bestseller session eventually. So I think you're doing the marketing strategy is working.
Great. One of the things we try to do is to also dive into some of the juicy parts of this book, so that at least and going through all of the poems that you wrote, and it's very interesting seeing there's some that are very very as brief as your typical Instagram poems, and there are some that are quite long. But in all of the poems, one of the things that you had said earlier that I think still speaks is how relatable they are. So I'll talk about 3 poems, and so that Toby can also touch on the ones that also interest her. The first is the poem about a bar of soap, and how page 21, where you talk about the bar of soap watches itself decrease daily, layer by layer, bubble by bubble, as it bubbles up and down through creases and bushes, corners and dark places upon a human skin, giving everything but getting only grit till its name fades away. When I read that, another part of saying till its name fades away, I remember there's this particular soap we used when we were growing up.
Say it.
I wouldn't until they pay for me to say it. But
because describe the soap.
No, I think that in this case it's a contradiction for that soap, right? Because the name doesn't.
What does the name of the soap start with?
I know what you guys are talking about. Was that the soap you had in mind?
So I'm sure that's not the one he has in mind. But so the contradiction that brings to me is that bar of soap, the name never really fades away, right? Because the name is, maybe that was why they made that soap in such a way that they had like a paper label on the soap. So you'd
Yeah.
you'd use that soap until
yeah,
all that you have left
It's
is the
just that
paper
paper that
label.
is left.
yeah,
So for
yeah,
many families, you check their dustbin, growing up then, you just always see that
yeah,
paper label with just a little soap around the edges,
yeah.
right? And I think why I say most of these poems are relatable is we all use soaps, right? But nobody ever thinks
That was
about,
the soap I had in mind.
oh,
That
really?
starts with
Ah,
I.
are
Yeah,
you sure? Because it
yeah.
sounded like there was another word. Anyways, I'm
No,
not
I just
wishing
realized
or keystone was
now
what I used to use while
that
growing up.
that soap has two words in its name.
I
So when
Yeah,
you
am.
it
said
does.
I was thinking of the other word, and then I just realized
Okay.
that yes, that's it. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, it's a
So the other poem that really caught my eye was Playdates. While Toby was reading the book, she would share snippets of it on Instagram, and I'll just laugh. And
yeah,
I remember that she said she wrote something about Playdates, and I just laughed because every time I read that poem, there's this Yoruba quote that comes to mind that says "Erikila
yeah,
jambe kunshe." You can always relate to, well, for context, for those that don't speak Yoruba,
yeah.
what games does a dog have playing with a tiger or a
oh
lion or whatever
modern.
you
Dog
want
and
to?
a tiger,
Yeah.
they have no
So
business being friends.
yeah,
Yeah,
so but in this case it's a dog and a chicken, right? So I have a
Chicken.
dog and my dog
yeah,
once killed a chicken, right?
yeah,
And ate it into pieces.
Oh my
And
god.
so when I
Massacre.
read that poem, I really could picture it, the dog and the chicken playing, and they would go in and out every day until it was,
Do you want to read that poem? I think it's a short one.
yes, I will
Yeah.
read it. I'll
Should I
read
read it?
Playdates. Well, yes, Toby, you can go ahead to read it.
Yeah. Okay. So every night, the chicken played with the new dog, like old friends, taking turns laughing, hugging, leaping at trees across lawns, under a bush, out of sight. Last night, the dog re-emerged sober, the chicken dangling in a cloud of feathers. Play dates are over. And
Playdates
I
are
added my
over.
own because my own interpretation on my Instagram story, what I wrote after reading it was like, may we not befriend our enemies though? And Ishoribu. And I added me. If you know, you know. Because again, it was so profound and it just conveyed a very deep meaning. You dive in deeper and closely into what Poetolu was trying to say. But really, what inspired that? Like, it's just like, yeah, we hear that saying, like, irregular jambe kunshi and all of that, but everybody that reads this particular short poem gets the message. I remember I got so many DMs afterwards, and everybody was like, what book is this? And it got them really intrigued and they wanted to know more, and everybody could relate. And, I almost always feel whenever I'm reading your poems that it's almost didactic, like you're trying to pass on a lesson, like moral lesson at the end of
Yeah.
maybe CRS or that kind of a thing. But don't let me take
Or have you
over. You
killed,
still answer the
or
question.
have
Shall
you,
we continue?
or have you been a dog that has killed many, or have you been a dog that has killed many chickens?
Oh Lord, epic question. Wait, stop
Good question.
confessing.
Good question. Good question. So you said something. You said um, when I write in a way, and people end up getting the message. But I don't think people end up getting the message because, yeah, I always have a message in mind. But I found out that people end up finding other messages in these poems that I'll admit I wasn't even thinking about. Right? Like I've had poems I wrote, I was thinking about. So someone came to me, I was like, "Oh, that poem you wrote about domestic violence." I was like, "What? Which poem did I write about domestic violence?" And they were like, "This XYZ." And I was like, actually, you could see it that way. But that wasn't what I had in mind. So what I had in mind when writing that poem was about a breakup in a relationship. Two people who are not compatible.
What's the correlation?
Yeah. So
Breakfast and domestic violence.
no, I'm talking about the play date poem now.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that was what I had in mind, and there have been other interpretations that other people have given to it. But what I had in mind was, so if a dog and a chicken wants to be friends, because of the nature of dogs, it makes it difficult. And just like you said, that Yoruba proverb, "Erekila jambe konshe," like even when they want to be friends, it's hard because dogs eat chickens. So even when the dog thinks he's playing with the
Exactly. Dogs eat
chicken,
chickens. So that
so
was why I asked that, or have you been a dog that's eating chickens? But let's not go. Let's not go there.
yeah.
Let him ask her now, Seyi, please.
We are already there.
yeah.
So there's another poem I wrote about, and I'll link it together. That how do you think they can't remember the title of the poem, but there are times when people have good intentions for you. Like, how do you refuse love? How do you refuse a ride in your neighbor's car? You're going for a wedding. I'm just paraphrasing the poem now. You're going for a
Yeah.
wedding, you wear all white, and then this
and,
your neighbor
and the car is
who's
going
in
to
the
tear
car
your clothes.
mechanic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
It's
all that
this very
soon.
rusty old car. Yeah, that soon comes out and tries to offer you a ride. Like, how do you say no? It means well, but even in his good intentions, it's going to cause you harm.
Yeah.
So
By
there
the
are
time you get to
times
your
when,
destination, your clothes would have
yeah,
been
you're
worn
all
out.
soiled up.
Mm-hmm.
So there are times when they've played the dog, not because they genuinely wanted to be a friend to the chicken, but they mean well, but somehow the chicken ends up dangling in their mouths, and
Red flag.
Well, that's enough answer. I think the final poem that I always remember is the one on photographs on page 45.
yeah,
Yeah, where it says it's disquieting of life and its caprices to give a minute of thought to this. You lay your bed, but will you be back to lie on it? You lie on your bed, but can you drop bets you rise from it? Each time your lovely post births a photograph, you never know where it may one day be used. On a missing person flyer, wanted person notice, or your obstacle. And one thing that it reminds me of again is, my mom passed recently, and
sorry to hear.
oh no, that's fine. So I know one of the things that was very striking during that process, especially when you're trying to prepare the program and all of that, is how you now start to look for photographs, right? And everybody's asking you, no, send more photos. We need more photos for this. We need more photos. The person that is designing the set in wherever, I say, oh, we need more photos. And you realize that indeed every photograph you take at some point in your life, because when you go to a funeral, for instance, we do not rely on the photos you took yesterday or today. We rely on the photos that, in fact, we even want to see the photos that you took when you were much younger.
Yeah,
Because we want to chronicle, we want to
yeah,
understand this person's journey and chronicle it.
yeah,
Oh, when he was a child, when he was in secondary school. So that was a very interesting poem because it just shows again that irony of life that, these little things, you never know what they end up becoming useful for or used for.
yeah. I think you nailed it, because what inspired that poem was, and I think it was social media. Like, we take lots of pictures that we post online, and
Mm-hmm.
once in a while you come across a post and they say, oh, somebody's missing, and please, have you seen this person? And I'm like, when that guy took, or this lady took this
Yeah,
picture,
took this
she
picture.
had no idea that,
Yeah.
oh, one day this picture will be used for this purpose. She probably was happy, something nice was happening. And I think it just the idea is to make us slow down and be more intentional, and just slow down about life sometimes, and just think. Yeah, things happen that we don't plan for. Yeah, that's a sad one.
Not necessarily, actually, because again, that's the sad part. But so I don't call it sad, right? I just find it interesting. So I'll say this again. Very much, in my adult life, I've tried to be more intentional about taking photographs or taking pictures, because when I was in secondary
It's
school,
interesting. Men
I
don't
didn't
like
really,
pictures.
yeah, well, because when I was in secondary school, I didn't really take pictures. So every time I try to look back at that time of my life, I just realized that I can't exactly. There's some pictures that I took maybe on holiday, right? But I never really had photos in my school uniform because I was in boarding house anyways. So every time I remember that time of my life, I'm like, oh no, I'm going to take more photos. I'm actually going to take more photos. So yeah, that's why it's an interesting poem. So there's the sad part. There's the, oh, let's live our lives and enjoy our lives part. And there's the, hey, you can always use that photo for a campaign poster anyways.
I still tell
Yeah.
people, yeah, I know, right? I still think one of the greatest inventions of man is photography.
Camera.
Like,
Exactly.
the camera, yeah, because it just gives us the ability to capture
Freeze
a moment
moments.
in time and keep it and store it. And I'll tell you, if you think photographs are vanity, people taking lots of pictures, they are just being
Vain.
vain. Yeah. My dad grew up an orphan, right? And he grew up an orphan. And not only did he grow up an orphan, he never met his dad or his
And he
mom.
never saw photos
And
of them,
he has no idea. He has no idea what
what they
they
look
look
like.
like.
Wow.
So in his adult years, I remember there was a time somebody told him that he had a picture of his dad. This person lived in Sapele, I think, and the lens my dad went to try and get that picture, he ended up not being able to get it. And like that would have meant the world to him to be able to see a picture of, like, he has no idea. All he has is descriptions that people told him. Oh, your dad was tall and fair, and he had this rally bicycle, and that's all he has. So I think pictures are very powerful. Like that ability to just capture a moment and keep it. It's almost like magic.
Yeah, it is actually.
Everybody needs a picture if you want to go into politics. So
Oh,
that's
exactly.
that's an upside to
That's interesting. Interesting take, Shay. I love the selection or the poems that stood out for you. And anyways, away from this melancholic mood that you've gotten us into, but it was much needed anyways. I'll just dive very quickly into my top three. It's so hard to pick, to be fair. I wish I was allowed to select like the top 10, but because of time, we'll just keep it to three. And it goes without mention that my number one had to be the poem that made me feel attacked. I was like, I am not understanding what is all this. Immediately after reading that poem, I had to do a post on my IG story. Shout out to everyone that kind of like took up the conversation with me via DM. And it's page 23, 4 kinds of people. Yeah, I'm sure you saw that.
Oh yeah.
So, it's very short, and I'm like,
that was short and sweet.
I felt like attacked. I'm like, what is all this thing? I'm going to read out the poem, and afterwards, I really want Poetolu to tell us that way. Like, what exactly runs through your mind? Like, what made you write this? Every single person must feel attacked after reading this particular poem. So if there are 4 kinds of people, the ones who have found love, the ones who have lost love, the ones looking for love, and the ones pretending they are not searching.
Those
and
are
the
the
most
ones that
popular
actually
question I was getting the most popular question I was getting in my DM was, which category are you? And I'm like, don't ask me. I feel attacked already. I'm angry. And then they're like, okay. And then I'm like, okay, guess. And everybody was guessing that I belong to the 4th category. And I'm like, oh, child, this is not fair. It's not fair. Yeah. So please tell us what was running through your mind when you were writing this particular one, sir.
I mean, I think that poem goes beyond love. It goes about, I think it's about everything, in the sense that, so before I go into that poem, the way I write is I'm very observant. I look around and I see things, and something catches my attention, and I think about it, and some other connected parts of it might come to mind, and then I write about it. So I can't really remember exactly what happened or what inspired that poem, but I think it's connected to something that happened with my sister when she lived in the UK. She was a student. Why am I even talking about my sister? This is something I can relate to, and this is why I said it goes beyond love. So when I moved to the UK, like 11 years ago or thereabouts, as a student, right? So I noticed that there were like 3 groups of students that we had, or maybe 4. I'll know very soon, 3 or 4. So there were people who came like from Nigeria, and they're like, I'm just coming to the UK, I'm doing the master's program, and once I'm done, I'm going to Nigeria.
There was nothing like jackpot there. Sack by jackpot.
Yeah. I'm just here for my master's program. I'm just here for my master's program. Once I'm done, I'm going my fire. I remember I had a friend then. She's still my friend. This girl she didn't like the UK. She just wanted to do her master's and just go. She did not want to stay. So that's the first group of people. Then there was a group of people that they never want to put foot on Nigerian soil again. So they came in, and as soon as they came in, they're asking people,
goodbye Nigeria.
After I finish my master's, how do I stay here?
How do I get a job?
I don't. How do I get a job? What do I do? And they were not ashamed to speak to anybody they met or anybody they meet, about their plans to live in the UK. And then there was a 3rd group of people that also had no intention of returning to Nigeria anytime soon, but they were not honest about it. So when they're talking to people, they would mask that intention and act like, I don't really care. If I get a job, I'll stay. And if I don't, yeah, I'll go back. If all of us leave Nigeria, who's going to develop Nigeria? That was the kind of things they would say. So they were not very intentional. Like, they were not very public about their desire to stay back. And I noticed that after we finished our master's program, most of the people that were very, very intentional and vocal and very, very outspoken about what they needed to do to stay back, almost all of them were able to get a job or stay back. And lots of the people who were hiding their intention, that really wanted to stay, but were pretending like they did not want to stay, ended up going. Yeah,
that's not a bad thing of
talking about my sister, she actually had a friend that was one of those people. So when my sister finished her master's program, she applied for the post-study visa. And then after she applied, she got 2 years. And then this lady didn't do that. And then she told my sister, she was like, why didn't you tell me about that? There was a visa that I could apply for that allowed me to stay. My sister was like, genuinely, from the way you always spoke about living this, you sounded like you didn't want to stay. So I didn't think it was something you'd be interested in.
Interesting.
And I think that was it. Yeah, so I think that was how it came across, and that was how it translated into the poem as well, talking about love. Like, there are some people who, they are very, very outspoken. I want to get married. I'm looking for love. Come and link me up with your brother. Come and link me up with your sister. Like, they are very, very outspoken. They are not hiding. And there are some people, they like someone, but they are pretending like, I don't care. I don't, I'm good. I don't need anybody, So I think that was the inspiration.
Inside line.
And I think that was it.
Okay.
And I think everybody falls into one of those 4 categories.
Certainly.
So what category are you? If we may ask, we're pressed for time anyways, but tell us.
Oh yeah, I think nobody fully stays in one category.
That's a very political answer, but think about it and
everybody goes through the 4 stages. Yeah. Everybody goes through the 4 stages. So I must have passed through the 4 stages, but I'm definitely not in the last stage. I'm very vocal. Like, before people ask me, are you single or in a relationship? And I'm like, I'll be very
diplomatic about your response, so very evasive.
But I don't find myself doing that a lot anymore, So I think everybody goes through all those stages. And the plan is to get stuck in the 4th stage and not have to leave it.
Oh, my chest.
Married man. Okay. Interesting. I'll just get right on to the second poem because of time. I think it's the title poem I heard was The Spider's Nest. I think you were trying to address a very important issue, which is around mental health.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm actually right with that, because after reading the poem, and I'm like, wow, this is so profound and it's such a noble thing to do, that you're shining the spotlight on an issue as important as that. And it just drives home the fact that there are times when we are going through a lot as humans and we choose to keep quiet and we don't even open up to those that are closest to us. The evil or whatever it is that is eating us up inside can take the better of us, and before you know it, that kind of like causes an increase in the number of suicides cases that we have in our society and all that. I think the crux of the matter from this particular poem is the need for one to actually speak up. And I know it takes a lot of courage, especially when you are sinking in that particular dark space, for you to, open up to someone that, oh, this is how I'm feeling. But again, when you're going through stuff, find few people within your circle that you can genuinely be vulnerable with and open up to them about. And also, I think it's also a clarion call for us as humans that when people tell you they are fine, that when you ask the question, how are you, you should actually mean it, right? You should be open enough to hear them out and, listen, right? Even to the things that they are not saying. So if you don't want to know how am I or how I'm doing, please don't bother asking me. In quotes. I guess that's what you're trying to convey. It's quite a long poem. I would have loved to read it, but I would definitely encourage anybody with a copy of this book to do that. And then finally, I think one of the reasons why a lot of people like Poetolu, or a lot of women, I used to say that 70% of your followers on Instagram are women. Kama kuro, kama jali. And you know it.
Right. Based on
Exactly.
Instagram analytics, yeah.
I agree.
I
I
don't
agree.
even have exactly. So again, it would be unfair to not pay homage to one of the subject matter or themes that have endeared you to many females, right? And so I'm going to be reading The Postman. That's like
Okay.
my third favorite, yeah. And it kind of like connected with me after reading it, and I'm like, interesting. So it reads, she waits for love patiently, the way one waits for a special delivery all day. She sits by the door, ears flared like a calabash, waiting for the door to ring. By noon, it rings eventually. She leaps up for the door, but it's only a neighbor borrowing a candle or two. By evening, it rings again. It's not the postman, it's two witnesses of Jehovah. Bible in hand, tracks under arm, greeting from hair to hair. Does she know, like the postman, sometimes love delays, but he arrives eventually as the parcel in the postman's bag, or as a neighbor's lame excuse to borrow a candle at noon? I felt that was such a beautiful, beautiful poem. And
Does
it
it
really
arrive
starts.
eventually? It's always
Oh,
a
yes.
question.
I mean, I guess the
Okay.
crux of the matter for this particular one is the fact that, we'll find, that popular song that, you find love in the most unlikely places, and there are moments when you imagine that this is the way my
And
love
what you're about
story,
to say
or
about
that, the
about
one would,
Ireti?
yeah,
But yeah, I
Rema
mean, that's
is
part of
flowing.
that's
Yeah,
part
go
of the
ahead. Go ahead.
message. That's part of the message, right? But I think the another message in the poem is not even about love arriving eventually, but about the fact that sometimes you're the one delaying love because it's always been there right beside you, but you didn't notice. So that guy came earlier in the day.
Wait, though. You people should not distort the image already created in my head. Please. Wait.
No,
The reason,
so
the interpretation I got was totally different. Tell you why. And of course,
yeah,
I'm not invalidating every single,
yeah,
meaning you guys have been able to derive from this. For me, it was just a case of sometimes love does not come in a particular package or in the shape or form that you imagine it to be. But either ways, it will come. And when it does, you will be discerning enough eventually to see that, oh my God, it's actually been right in front of me all this while and I didn't know it. Because if you are
Exactly.
putting
Like
it the
the
way you
neighbor that
are,
always
then that
came
means you are
twice
portraying
now.
that, self love. I'm like, it's already there. No, I'm not. I don't want. I'm not a preacher of
no,
self
no, no, no,
love.
no,
It's
no,
not
Okay,
no,
just
yes, I
no,
self love.
have.
no,
It's not self
no, no.
love.
I wasn't talking about self love. I'm talking about
Self love.
so
The neighbor came twice.
the neighbor came. Yeah, no, he came at so the neighbor came at noon.
Mm-hmm.
To borrow
The
candle,
neighbor
lost one. You know
exactly.
when
So
Exactly.
that
it's not
is
night.
exactly. He came to offer
Exactly.
love, pretending that was an excuse to see her,
Why would the neighbor
but he
borrow
didn't
candle
notice.
at noon?
He didn't notice because who needs a candle at noontime?
Okay,
But
interesting.
she was hell bent. She was hell bent on waiting for the postman. That she
Yeah, it
was
had
hell
to be
bent
a
on believing
letter.
the love was going to come through the postman, but it already
Hmm.
came in the afternoon through the neighbor. And I think my idea is, yeah, sometimes what we're looking for has always been there, right beside us, not inside us. I'm not
Hmm.
talking about self love, but like someone that
Okay.
you has always been there, but you just never saw this person as
Hmm.
the person. Um, okay.
Interesting. I mean, it's like it goes without saying that this book was or is a must read and a fabulous one at that. I mean, as simple as it is, we all could begin to pick different, interpretations to it. And I'm not sure every poet successfully delivers on that particular element in every of their work. And so, Sheyi, can you tell us, please, why this book is worth reading in less than 60 seconds and how many stars you would rate it?
Simple, relatable, easy to pick favorites. 4.5 or 5 stars.
Oh, that's very touching. Oh, wait, to stop being dramatic, please.
Yes.
Well, I
Yeah,
mean,
very.
he actually deserves a 4.5, to be honest, and I seconded. It's that good, and I honestly feel it makes for a great conversation. It kind of like speaks to you. There's always one that will tug at the strings of your heart if you take time enough to read it. It's a book that I would keep right beside my bed because I know on gloomy days or moments when I just want something that would help me kickstart some kind of reflection. When I pick it up and I read, even if it's just one poem, then it would, in quotes, minister to me. There's one deep meaning or something that would lift me or, help me make sense or meaning of whatever it is that I'm going through. So I really want to thank you, Poetolu, for this beautiful, beautiful body of work. I hope that the
Thank you so much.
source, the place that, or the source of the inspiration or wherever this stems from never runs dry, and that your followership continues to grow irrespective of whatever Instagram algorithm is doing to everybody, and that your book continues to be a bestseller and appeal to people who actually hate poetry. Um, if you're curious to want to know where to grab copies of Our Head Was a Spider's Nest, please feel free to reach out to Roving Heights. They're on Instagram. You can reach them across socials, or you can decide to walk into any of their bookstores across Nigeria. I'm also very much aware that the book is available on Amazon. So please, if you're in other parts of the world, you definitely want to grab a copy. And you would love, and every single moment of it, it's good value for money. Yeah, it's been exciting having you here, Poetolu. I hope you had such a wonderful time as much as we did.
It was fun.
Yeah, it was such an interesting session with you. I think what's quite interesting is for me it's always about understanding context of people's journeys and just
Yeah.
finding out how they either stumbled or made their way into what then has become a source of either a career path, a sort of livelihood, or just some sort of expression. So going past that and now going into some of the poems and trying to just understand the motivations, or well, some I'm sure there's some that we don't really know the exact motivations, even though you try to give us one or two answers. But thank you very much for the time. Really, it was such a good time.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Toby. Thank you so much, guys. It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. That's it from us on this episode. We want to thank every single person for tuning in. Please feel free to send us your feedback, hit us up on Twitter, on Instagram, or you can feel free to send us an email as well. And please don't forget to subscribe. Tell a friend to please listen in. It would go a long way in, boosting our morale and, us going at this. So thank you guys. Till next time. Cheers.